What happens when a music legend refuses to play by the rules of morning television? When Chaka Khan sat down on that couch, nobody expected the conversation to spiral the way it did. The Queen of Funk came ready to speak her truth, and Roker found himself in the middle of an exchange that would have producers frantically signaling from behind the cameras. Before we get into what actually went down, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me whose side you're on after you hear this whole thing. Because trust me, you're going to have opinions. The segment started innocently enough. Chaka walked onto the set wearing an elegant burnt orange suit that commanded attention without trying too hard. Her signature curls framed her face perfectly, and she had that knowing smile, the one that said she'd seen everything the industry could throw at her and came out stronger. Stood to greet her with his usual warmth, that practiced morning show energy that's supposed to make every guest feel like they're talking to an old friend. "Chaka Khan, welcome back to Today," said, his voice hitting that sweet spot between professional and personable. "It's always a pleasure to have you here." "Good morning, Al," Chaka responded, settling into the couch with the kind of ease that only comes from decades in the spotlight. "Though I have to say, calling anywhere in New York at this hour good might be stretching it." Al laughed, that genuine chuckle that's made him a morning show staple for years. "Not a morning person. I would have thought, with your schedule over the years, you'd be used to early calls." "Oh, I'm used to them," Chaka said, crossing her legs and leaning back slightly. "Doesn't mean I have to like them. But we're here, so let's make it worth everyone's time." There was something in her tone, a slight edge that maybe only someone really listening would catch. Al, to his credit, picked up on it but pushed forward with his planned questions, likely figuring it was just pre-interview energy that would settle once they got rolling. "Well, we definitely want to talk about your upcoming tours," Al continued, glancing down at his notes briefly before making eye contact again. "But I think a lot of our viewers are curious about something else. There's been some buzz online about comments you made in a podcast interview about the current state of music. You said, and I'm quoting here, that real artistry is dying because nobody wants to work for it anymore. That's a pretty strong statement." Chaka didn't miss a beat. "It is a strong statement. It's also true. But don't you think that's a bit harsh?" Al asked, his eyebrows raising slightly. "I mean, there are incredible artists out there right now doing amazing things. Different doesn't necessarily mean worse, right?" "Al, let me ask you something," Chaka said, shifting forward in her seat. "When you watch the weather report, do you just read numbers off a screen? Or do you understand the systems, the patterns, the science behind what you're telling people?" Al looked momentarily thrown by the redirect. "Well, I studied meteorology, so yes, I understand the science." "Exactly," Chaka said, pointing at him for emphasis. "You put in the work. You learned your craft. Now tell me how many artists today can actually read music? How many can play an instrument at a professional level? How many understand music theory beyond what some producer programmed into a laptop?" "I think that's changing the definition of what music is," Al countered. And you could see him shifting slightly, moving from genial host to someone ready to actually debate. Technology has always influenced music. The electric guitar was technology once. Synthesizers were new technology. Auto-tune is just the latest tool. "A tool is something that enhances your existing ability," Chaka shot back, her voice rising just slightly. "Auto-tune isn't enhancing anything. It's replacing ability with artifice. And before you say, 'I'm just being old and bitter,' understand that I learned from people who learned from people who created genres. I can sing, I can write, I can arrange. I earned my place." "What are these new artists earning?" Al's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "They're earning their place with their fans. Streams, sold-out shows, cultural impact. Isn't that what matters? If people connect with the music, does it matter how it was made?" "Yes, Al, it absolutely matters how it was made," Chaka said, and now there was real fire in her voice. "Because when you strip away the production, the auto-tune, the ghostwriters, what do you have left? Can they get on a stage with just their voice and a microphone and hold an audience? Can they sing the same song twice and have it sound equally powerful both times? Or is it all smoke and mirrors?" "That sounds incredibly elitist," Al said, and there was an edge to his voice now too. The morning show veneer was cracking. "You're essentially saying that if someone makes music differently than you did, it's not valid. That's not fair. Elitist," Chaka repeated, and she actually laughed. But it wasn't a pleasant sound. "Let me tell you what's elitist," AL. What's elitist is an industry that tells young people they don't need to develop real skills because we can fix everything in post-production. What's elitist is convincing an entire generation that talent is optional if you have the right look and the right connections. I'm not being elitist, I'm being honest, and maybe that's the problem. The studio had gone very quiet. You could almost feel the tension radiating off the screen. Al glanced briefly off camera, probably toward a producer, but when he looked back at Chaka, his expression had hardened. Honest or judgmental? He asked. Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're judging an entire generation of artists based on a standard that maybe doesn't apply anymore. Music evolves. Art evolves. Maybe your definition of what makes a real artist needs to evolve too. Chaka's eyes narrowed. My definition doesn't need to evolve, Al. Quality is quality. Talent is talent. You can dress it up with whatever modern language you want, but at the end of the day, either you can do the thing or you can't. And if you can't do it without a computer doing half the work, then what are we really celebrating? We're celebrating creativity, Al said, his voice firm. We're celebrating people who are finding new ways to express themselves, new ways to connect with audiences. Just because it's not your way doesn't make it wrong, and just because it's popular doesn't make it right, Chaka fired back. Popularity and quality are not the same thing. They never have been. You know what else is popular? Fast food. Doesn't mean it's good for you. Al actually laughed at that, but it was the kind of laugh that comes when you're frustrated and trying to maintain composure. So now you're comparing modern music to fast food. Come on, Chaka. If the comparison fits, she said, not backing down an inch. Mass-produced, designed for quick consumption, no nutritional value leaves you feeling empty afterward. Yeah, Al, I'm comparing it to fast food. That's incredibly dismissive of artists who are working hard and creating things that matter to millions of people, Al said. And now his frustration was fully visible. You don't have to like it, but you could at least respect that they're doing something meaningful for their audience. I respect work, Chaka said coldly. Show me the work, and I'll respect it. Show me someone who can actually sing, who writes their own material, who understands their craft beyond pressing buttons, and I'll be the first one to celebrate them. But I'm not going to pretend that what passes for talent today is anywhere near the level of what my generation brought to the table. The conversation had completely derailed from whatever puff piece had been planned. Al was visibly struggling to regain control of the interview, and Chaka was planted firmly in her position, showing no signs of softening her stance. Your generation also had plenty of manufactured acts, Al pointed out. Studio musicians, session singers, ghostwriters, none of that is new. You're romanticizing the past. I'm not romanticizing anything, Chaka snapped back. I'm acknowledging reality. Yes, there were manufactured acts. The difference is, the real artists stood out because the contrast was obvious. When you heard Aretha, you knew that was Aretha. When you heard Stevie, that was Stevie. Their talent was undeniable, unfiltered, and unreplicable. Today, everyone sounds the same because they're all using the same production tricks, the same vocal processors, the same songwriting teams. Where's the individuality? Where's the voice that makes you stop what you're doing and just listen? Al leaned forward, and you could see the frustration building behind his eyes. You're acting like technology is the enemy. Technology has democratized music. People who couldn't afford studio time or expensive instruments can now create from their bedrooms. That's a good thing, Chaka. That's opportunity. Opportunity to do what, exactly? Chaka challenged. To flood the market with mediocrity. To convince people that anyone can be an artist without putting in the years of practice and dedication. You know what that sounds like to me, Al? Participation trophies. Everyone gets to be special. Everyone gets to be a star, whether they earned it or not. That's condescending, Al said flatly. You're being condescending to people who are pursuing their dreams. No, I'm being realistic about what those dreams actually require, Chaka responded, her voice steady but sharp. Dreams are beautiful, but they require work. They require sacrifice. They require talent that you develop over time, not something you download or purchase. When I started singing, I sang in every club, every venue that would have me. I practiced until my voice was raw. I studied the greats. I learned, what's the equivalent today? Posting a video and hoping it goes viral. Al's expression shifted, and there was something almost personal flickering across his face now. You know what, Chaka? Maybe the problem isn't the new artists. Maybe the problem is that people like you can't accept that you're not the gatekeepers anymore. The industry has changed, and it's left a lot of your generation behind. That's not the new artist's fault. That's evolution. The temperature in the studio seemed to drop. Chaka's posture changed, straightening in a way that suggested Al had just crossed a line he didn't realize existed. Left behind, she repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. You think I've been left behind? Al, I'm still selling out venues. I'm still getting standing ovations. People still know every word to my songs I wrote decades ago. Meanwhile, tell me which of today's viral sensations will still be relevant in 5 years, let alone 30. I haven't been left behind. I've been watching the industry race toward irrelevance while pretending it's progress. That's your perspective, Al said, his jaw tight. But the numbers don't lie. Streaming has changed everything. These artists you're dismissing are reaching audiences your generation couldn't have dreamed of. Reaching them with what? Chaka demanded. Empty calories. Music designed to be background noise for 15-second videos. Come on, Al, you're smarter than this. Numbers don't equal impact. Views don't equal legacy. Any fool with a catchy hook and a decent marketing budget can rack up streams. But can they move people? Can they change lives? Can they create something that outlasts the algorithm? You don't get to decide what moves people, Al countered. The audience decides that, and clearly, they're being moved by what's out there now, whether you approve or not. The audience is being fed, Chaka said, her voice rising again. They're being fed whatever the algorithm determines will keep them scrolling, keep them clicking, keep them consuming. That's not the same as choosing. That's not the same as being exposed to real artistry and making an informed decision. You're confusing exposure with choice. Al shook his head, clearly exasperated. So everyone who enjoys modern music is just a mindless consumer. Is that what you're saying? They're all just too unsophisticated to recognize that your way was better. Don't put words in my mouth, Chaka shot back. I'm saying they're not being given a real choice. When was the last time someone turned on the radio and heard a full band playing? Real instruments, real vocals, real emotion. When was the last time an awards show celebrated musicianship over marketability? The audience can only choose from what they're being served. And what they're being served is a steady diet of the same processed nonsense. That's incredibly patronizing to your own fans, Al said, and there was a bite to his words now. You're essentially saying they're not smart enough to know what they like. I'm saying they deserve better, Chaka corrected. My fans, new fans, everyone. They deserve artists who respect them enough to give them something real, not just something marketable, not just something designed by committee to hit demographic targets. Something real. And you're the judge of what's real, Al asked, his voice heavy with skepticism. That's a lot of power to give yourself, Chaka. I'm not judging, she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. I'm observing. And what I'm observing is a race to the bottom where the bar gets lower every year, and everyone celebrates it like it's innovation. Al glanced off camera again, longer this time, and when he turned back, his expression had shifted into something harder, more resolved. You know what I think? I think you're scared. I think you're scared that the industry doesn't need what you represent anymore. And instead of adapting, you're attacking the people who did adapt. Chaka's eyes flashed. Scared? You think I'm scared, Al? Let me tell you what scares me. What scares me is a generation of kids who think they can skip the fundamentals and jump straight to success. What scares me is an industry that encourages that because it's more profitable to churn out disposable acts than to invest in developing real artists. What scares me is watching something I love, something I dedicated my life to, get reduced to content, not music, AL content. Maybe that's what it needs to be now, Al said, his voice steady but cold. Maybe music as content is how it survives. Maybe your attachment to how things used to be is exactly what's holding the art form back. Or maybe, Chaka said, leaning forward with intensity burning in her gaze, the way things used to be is what made music matter. You want to talk about survival? Music will survive because real artists will always exist. What won't survive is this current model where everything sounds the same, where no one stands out, where it's all just noise designed to fill space between advertisements. That's a romantic notion, Al said dismissively, but it ignores reality. The reality is that more people are making music now than ever before. More people are able to share their art than ever before. That's beautiful, Chaka. That's democratization. No, Al, Chaka said firmly. That's dilution. You're confusing access with ability. Just because everyone can do something doesn't mean everyone should do something. Would you want a doctor who learned medicine from YouTube videos? Would you trust a pilot who never actually trained in a real cockpit? But somehow, when it comes to music, we're supposed to celebrate the fact that people with no training, no skill, no understanding of the craft are being treated like professionals. That's not democratization. That's devaluation. The comparison seemed to land because Al paused for a moment, his mouth opening and then closing as he reconsidered his response. But when he spoke again, his conviction hadn't wavered. Music isn't surgery or flying a plane, he said. Music is expression. It's emotion. You don't need a degree to express yourself. You don't need decades of training to make people feel something. Some of the most powerful music in history came from people with no formal training. And they had natural talent, Chaka interjected. They had something innate that they nurtured. That's different from someone who can't carry a tune relying on pitch correction. That's different from someone who can't write a melody using a team of ghostwriters. You're talking about raw talent. I'm talking about manufactured illusion. Those are not the same thing. Who are you to draw that line? Al pressed, his frustration fully visible now. Who made you the authority on what counts as real talent versus manufactured illusion? 40 years in this industry made me the authority, Chaka said without hesitation. 40 years of working with the best, learning from the best, pushing myself to be the best. That's what made me the authority. Not arrogance, Al, experience. There's a difference. Al's expression hardened even further, and you could see the moment he decided to really push back. Experience can also make you rigid. It can make you unable to see value in things that don't fit your predetermined definitions. Maybe what you're calling experience is actually just stubbornness. Chaka's head tilted slightly, and her smile was anything but warm. Stubbornness. That's an interesting word choice. Al, tell me, when you stand in front of that green screen every morning predicting the weather, do you ever think about what you'd be without the technology? Do you ever wonder if you could do your job with just your knowledge and nothing else? Or have you gotten so comfortable with the tools that you've forgotten what the craft actually requires? That's a false equivalence, and you know it, Al said, his voice rising slightly. I use technology to communicate information more effectively. That's not the same as using it to mask a lack of ability, isn't it though? Chaka pressed. You just admitted that you rely on that technology to do your job. The graphics, the radar, the satellite imagery. Without all of that, you'd just be a guy talking about whether it might rain. So why is it okay for you to use technology as a crutch, but not okay for musicians to do the same? Because I have the knowledge, Al said firmly. The technology enhances what I already know. I could explain a weather pattern without the graphics. Could these artists you're criticizing perform without their technology? That's the difference. So you agree with me? Chaka said, spreading her hands as if she'd just proven her point. You agree that there's a fundamental difference between using technology to enhance existing ability versus using it to compensate for a lack of ability. That's literally what I've been saying this entire time. Al's jaw clenched. Don't twist my words. I'm talking about myself. You're making sweeping generalizations about an entire generation of artists based on your personal bias. Personal bias, Chaka repeated, and she actually laughed, sharp and cutting. Al, I have nothing to be biased about. I've already achieved everything I wanted to achieve. I'm not competing with these new artists. I'm not threatened by them. I'm disappointed by the standard we've accepted. There's a difference between bias and having standards. Your standards, Al emphasized, not universal standards. Yours. And you're using this platform to tear down. People who are doing their best to make art in the world as it exists now. Not the world as it existed when you were coming up. The world changes. Al, but excellence doesn't, Chaka said, her voice steady and certain. A great singer was a great singer 50 years ago, and a great singer is a great singer today. A great song was a great song then, and it's a great song now. What's changed is our willingness to accept mediocrity as long as it comes with good marketing. That's not evolution. That's regression dressed up as progress. You keep talking about excellence and standards, Al said. And there was a weariness creeping into his voice now, like he was tired of running in circles. But you won't acknowledge that maybe those things can look different than they used to. Maybe excellence in music today means being able to produce your own tracks. Maybe it means understanding digital production. Maybe it means connecting with a global audience in ways that weren't possible before. Maybe, Chaka echoed mockingly. You keep saying maybe like these are open questions. They're not. I can tell you definitively that clicking a mouse is not the same as playing an instrument. I can tell you definitively that using pitch correction is not the same as being able to sing. I can tell you definitively that having followers is not the same as having talent. These aren't matters of opinion, Al. These are facts. According to you, Al shot back, according to your very narrow definition of what counts. But the industry has spoken. The audience has spoken. They've moved on, Chaka. Maybe it's time you did too. The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Chaka went very still, her eyes locked on Al with an intensity that could cut glass. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet, controlled, dangerous. Moved on, she said slowly. You think I need to move on? That's rich, Al. That's really rich, coming from someone who's built a career on being agreeable, on never rocking the boat, on making sure everyone feels comfortable. You know what that makes you? A facilitator. Not a journalist, not a critic, not someone with an actual point of view. Just someone who nods and smiles and asks the questions the producers write on your cards. Al's face flushed, genuine anger flashing across his features. That's completely out of line. You don't know anything about my career or what I've done. I know you're sitting here defending mediocrity because it's popular, Chaka said, her voice rising. I know you're more concerned with being likable than being honest. I know that when given the choice between truth and comfort, you choose comfort every single time. That's what I know about your career, Al. And you choose controversy, Al fired back. You choose being divisive because it keeps you relevant. This whole conversation, these opinions you're sharing, it's not about protecting the integrity of music. It's about getting attention. It's about making headlines. Well, congratulations, Chaka. You'll get your headlines. Chaka stood up abruptly, and the movement was so sudden that it actually startled Al into silence. She reached up and removed her microphone with practiced ease, the pack coming off her belt in one smooth motion. Her expression was calm now, eerily calm, like she'd moved past anger into something else entirely. You know what, Al? She said, her voice measured and clear. I came here thinking we could have an actual conversation about something that matters. I thought maybe, just maybe, someone in mainstream media would be willing to have a real discussion about the state of music, instead of just promoting whatever's trending. I was wrong. Chaka, come on, Al started, but she held up a hand. No, I'm done, she said firmly. I'm done pretending that disagreement is the same as controversy. I'm done being talked down to by someone who thinks longevity equals irrelevance. And I'm definitely done being told that my experience and my standards don't matter because they make people uncomfortable. You want to celebrate mediocrity? You want to pretend that what's popular is automatically what's good? You do that, but you'll do it without me. We're in the middle of a segment, Al said, and you could hear the shock in his voice. The disbelief that this was actually happening. You can't just walk off. Watch me, Chaka said simply. She set the microphone down on the couch with deliberate care, like she was placing a period at the end of a sentence. You want someone who's going to sit here and agree with you? Someone who's going to validate your comfortable little opinions. Call one of those artists who can't sing without autotune. I'm sure they'd love the exposure. This is unprofessional, Al said, standing now to his voice tight with a mix of anger and embarrassment. Chaka turned to face him fully, and when she spoke, her voice was calm, but absolutely final. You know what's unprofessional, Al? Inviting someone on your show and then spending the entire time telling them they're wrong for having standards. You want to talk about professionalism? A professional doesn't ambush their guests. A professional doesn't dismiss decades of experience because it doesn't fit their narrative. A professional actually listens instead of just waiting for their turn to talk. I was listening, Al protested. I was engaging with what you were saying. No, Chaka corrected, shaking her head. You were disagreeing. There's a difference. You made up your mind about what I was saying before I even sat down. This wasn't an interview, Al. It was a setup. And I don't have time for setups. She turned then, moving toward the edge of the set with the kind of dignity that only comes from absolute certainty in your decision. Al stood there, clearly torn between trying to salvage the segment and maintaining his own composure. The cameras were still rolling, catching every moment of the breakdown. "Chaka, please," Al tried one more time, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "We can continue this conversation. We can find common ground." Chaka paused at the edge of the set, turning back to look at him one last time. "Common ground requires both people to be standing on solid earth. Al, you're standing on sand. On shifting trends and popularity contests and whatever keeps the ratings up. I'm standing on 40 years of proven excellence. We're not going to find common ground because we're not even in the same landscape." "So that's it?" Al asked, and there was something almost hurt in his voice now. "You're just going to walk away." "I'm not walking away," Chaka said, and her slight smile held no warmth. "I'm walking out. There's a difference. Walking away suggests I'm giving up or running from something. Walking out means I'm choosing not to participate in something that doesn't serve me or my values. And this," she gestured at the set, at Al, at the whole situation, "this definitely doesn't serve me." With that, she turned and walked off the set, her heels clicking against the floor in the silence that had fallen over the studio. You could see crew members frozen in place, unsure of what to do, how to react. So, was Chaka Khan right to defend traditional artistry and standards, or was she being unreasonably rigid about change? Drop a comment below and let me know where you stand, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one.